just wanted to say something about the little time. I wanted to say something about the lojong slogans for today. These wonderfully sort of irritating slogans that kind of like a bit like grit they get underneath your skin. Wonderful. So the slogan is "Don't talk about injured limbs," which is very typical of these lojong slogans. Slightly mystical, slightly cryptic, but also quite blunt. And remember, these slogans are all connected with the project of overcoming self, or rather stopping this habit of mind which is so centered in the self, and coming back to this natural state which is connected to the other. So this is always in the background of our minds when we're working with the lojong slogans. But in relation to what Bill and Valerie were saying, that this natural state of just being in the heart, in this kind of very simple, beyond right or wrong space, is the space that connects with the other. It's already connected with the other. And it is not the space that is in the kind of, oh, I'm doing it right, I'm doing it right, I'm doing it wrong. Other people will think I'm stupid, or all of that I, me, mine sort of thinking. So this practice of coming into the heart is, if you like, coming into this natural state where you can connect with other people or other things or landscape or birds or whatever in a very simple, tender way. But these slogans are very, as we've said numerous times before, and there's a sort of blunt level and then there's a sort of deeper level. And the blunt level here is, don't pick on people. Don't be judgy and critical of other people. I mean, literally, because they're damaged, or they can't walk, or they've got some impediment. So it's a very literal sense of, don't talk about other people's injured limbs. Don't talk about other people's wounds or defects. And on a more elevated, slightly more elevated level, it means don't judge. Because that whole process of judging is really the business of the thinking ego mind. When you're connected with everything, when you're in the heart space, there is no judgment. It's a very just like, here we all are. All here in the same space. Judgment is not applicable. But as soon as we kind of go up above the chin into our mind, then we can become intensely judgy. And I notice this a lot. I've written about this on my blog, about how I often wake up feeling intensely critical of Daniel. And it's very ugly and I don't like it, but it's real. And I wake up and I'm like, oh, he didn't do this and he shouldn't do that. And I get into this real kind of shit heap of like rolling around in the manure like a pig in manure. Like kind of really, and then it's, and fortunately, through Daniel's gentle prompting and also these practices, I notice it now, and I'm like, oh, that's really shitty. And I come down and I do some practice. But what I recognize is that tendency of the thinking mind, of the ego mind, to criticize others, of course, comes from a place of woundedness ourselves. If we didn't feel, if there wasn't material in ourselves that we were trying to avoid, then we probably wouldn't feel that way about other people. We're often acting out our own woundedness. So this talking about injured limbs, in my case, it's like talking about Daniel's defects. But of course, it's my defect. My defect is this horrible, judgy, sort of arrogant turn of mind, which is a relic of childhood wounding and like the defenses I did against that. So once again, the kind of slogan is forked. It's pointing both at a very simple worldly bit of advice. Don't malign other people, don't dwell on other people's failings, don't talk about injured limbs. But it's also a more profound instruction about do not judge. And when you notice you're judging, then you know that you are in the ego thinking mind. This is the evidence that you are not in the heart. And you have a choice to drop the chin, relax the jaw, take a breath, come back into the heart. And this is what, the lojong slogans are not about, just drift along and be nice and, just hope for the best. They're pretty blunt in their instructions. No, change your attitude, but remain natural. Don't talk about injured limbs, and we're coming into a whole slew of don't do this, don't do that. They're not that part of meditation which is just accept everything and be with everything. It's like, no, you've got work to do. You need to free yourself from this horrible habit of judging and being trapped in your ego mind. And these are the ways that you can do it. This is one of 59. So it's important to recognize that there is work to be done. But what I love about these heart-based practices is that actually being in the natural state doesn't feel like work. Being in the ego state starts to feel like work, and so we naturally incline towards resting in the heart space. So this is what I think is really potent about them. It's the thing we want to do, the natural state, is the state of pleasure, bliss and connectivity. And the thing we want to change away from is the source of misery and nastiness and bad smell. So these practices, they don't feel like work, they actually feel like a relief, a release.